Hello and welcome to Help. My AWS backup bill is out of control. Today's webinar is sponsored by Clumio and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this timely discussion. Now, before we get to today's great content, we do have a few housekeeping items that will help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. The Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues, but if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to a link for a demo from Clumio, and then PDFs on backup data in AWS, cost optimizing backup for data in AWS with Clumio, and analyzing the economic benefits of Clumio in AWS environments. So I encourage you to access those resources now and share them with your friends and colleagues. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the prize terms and conditions link there. And with that, let's get to today's fantastic presentation. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter today. We have Karthik Pinamaneni, who's Vice President of Sales Engineering at Clumio. And we've also got Chris here to handle Q&A. So I'm going to turn things over to Karthik.
Our goal today is to just kind of talk you through how do you actually review your existing AWS backup bill and figure out how to find things in it. Second, help you through a journey of identify, protect, and report from a Clumio perspective. Give you a couple of customer examples, and lastly, we'll share our own example of what we did at Clumio to reduce our AWS costs itself. Not just backup costs, but AWS costs itself. With that, let's get started. We've all looked at AWS bills and scratched our heads. It's incredibly complex. It also gets more and more complex when you try to calculate just the backup cost. It's like finding a needle in the haystack. Now that you found this needle, add in all the variables such as provision versus actual storage consumed, free tier versus paid tier, different regions, transfer costs, API costs. It just all adds up. And it just is incredibly tough to really pinpoint exactly what the cost of a very specific backup cost is for one of the services. So here's just a few examples. One's for EC2, one's for RDS, and one's for S3. As you can tell, there are different ways to do it for different services. And by the way, this is a simpler view. Now you have to kind of add the regions and the different variables I talked about as well. For each of these, there are 3 different methods to calculate the backup cost. If you have the time and patience, you can find out a cost for backing up your AWS resource. Time and patience is not a luxury these days. By the way, this is just for 1 month. What if you want to calculate and analyze cost? By the way, did you know that backups tend to be 2 to 8 times of the actual utilized storage that you have? That means you do have to have a very cost-effective backup methodology. Otherwise, your costs for backups are going to be incredibly high. When you're looking at these bills, I hope you have your pocket calculator ready for you. So at Clumio, our goal is to simplify all of this complex math and make your data protection as simple as possible, but do it in a very, very cost-effective way. To achieve this, we first help identify assets that require protection. backing them up to meet their SLA, and providing cost-effective options. And lastly, providing clarity in what the cost for backup recovery is for these assets as well. So let's walk through each one of these just to help you understand how Clumio can help you not just identify, protect, but most importantly, also report on the cost as well. So first, focus on identification. Clumio offers Discover as part of the platform, which provides visibility to all your assets in your AWS account and the associated data protection for them, or lack thereof. By the way, this is before even Clumio protects data for your AWS assets. If you have snapshots running, if you have any other backup policies running for your AWS assets, we can discover them and show you exactly what the data protection capabilities are for that. Discover really provides a history of protection for all your assets, if they're meeting their compliance requirements, and how quickly you can restore your business critical data. At the end of the day, restoring the data is the most important thing that a backup tool can provide to you. Discover is also a great tool to help CloudOps, DevOps, and FinOps teams to really collaborate together and clearly identify and tag the assets with its appropriate SLA, right? Oftentimes, CloudOps has their own view, DevOps has their own view, FinOps has their own view. FinOps view is always to reduce costs, but CloudOps and DevOps are always of differentiated opinions of which assets require which SLAs. But this is a good way to really collaborate together and identify the appropriate SLAs for the appropriate assets. Think about it, a tool to identify whether to dial up or dial down the protection for any given asset in the AWS environment, right? This is also very important, right? So sometimes the assets might have way too much protection. So if they can meet their SLA with lower protection requirements, then you can dial it down as well. Lastly, it also is a great tool to identify orphan data. We've heard from countless customers about orphan snapshots costing organizations a lot of money. This is a great way to identify these orphan snapshots so we can delete them. And by the way, Clumio Discover is free of charge, right? It comes with the platform. All you have to do is sign up for Clumio, and you will see the Discover capabilities right off the bat. Now that you've done the identification, next is protection. So at Clumio, it starts with providing customers with several protection tiers and protection offerings as well. This gives customers the flexibility to pick a tier that meets the application backup and recovery SLAs. At the end of the day, I'll reiterate this, you need a backup tool that can help you recover data when you need to and at the right time as well. That's what matters the most out of any backup tool. In other words, place the backup data in the right place at the right time, but with Clumio, you get it at the best cost as well. Here are just 3 examples of the different offerings we have, and these are predominantly focused on cost-effective. What I've mentioned here is just the cost-effective tiers that we have available. There are several other offerings as well. First offering is our Secure Vault for S3. Right off the bat, this is one of the most differentiated offerings we have on the platform. S3 data protection is becoming more of a requirement for compliance and ransomware recovery, as more and more critical services are being built on with data for them residing in S3. Clumio's S3 protection offering is built for simplicity and scale while making it very, very cost effective. As a matter of fact, it's the most cost effective solution in the market today. It is at least 50% of the cost of the AWS backup, AWS's own native backup tool, if in an apples to apples comparison. Let me repeat that. It's 50% of the cost of AWS backup, right? In an apples to apples comparison. But we can drive the cost further down to 80% savings of AWS backup for data that requires longer term retention for compliance reasons. This in itself is an incredible offering. And this is one of the big reasons why a lot of customers are adopting Clumio as well. And keep in mind that S3 tends to be a place where a lot of the data is dumped to, and And it keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And S3 is also one of the most mature offerings that AWS has, and one of the first offerings as well. So hence the popularity and the reason for backing up the data as well. Clumio Convert is the second offering. I briefly mentioned this earlier as well. We introduced this service after listening to our customer base, where they mentioned they had been spending significant amount of money on retaining EC2 snapshots that are required for longer term retention. Again, we talked about identifying EC2 snapshots and sometimes even orphan snapshots. How about we have snapshots that are required to be kept for a long enough time for long-term retention? Clumio Convert basically takes these existing historical EC2 snapshots from your AWS account and rips them into Clumio's more cost-effective backup tier. This ensures that customers have the peace of mind of retaining data for longer term, but doing so at a very far reduced cost as well. This is one of our offerings that's getting a lot of popularity, and I'll talk about a customer example coming up here shortly as well. Secure Vault Lite is another example of an offering that we introduced after talking to a lot of our customers. We have a standard offering which offers a lot of different flexibility and capabilities. Lite is a reduced set of capabilities based on our standard, where it's primarily focused on longer term retention of data, but to do it in a cost-effective manner. This variation of the standard tier for Secure Vault, where customers can now save up to 30% in backup costs as well. All right, so now we've identified the data that we want to protect. Now we've protected the data that we wanted to protect as well at the appropriate SLAs in a cost-effective manner. How about we report? This is what we talked about earlier, where reporting with AWS has never been easy with regards to, especially when it comes to costs as well. In today's world of consumption-based metrics, it is very, very important to be able to show exactly how much the customer's usage is for every services that they consume. At Clumio, we really believe in transparency. Hence, we built in all of the different reports that the user can scroll through for consumption-based metrics for to figure out the consumption for days, months, or even years, right? So we can span across 3 years if you really need to find the consumption metrics for that. So no more finding a needle in the haystack like you would with AWS backup builds or AWS builds in general. In this example, you can ascertain, customers can ascertain usage-based data consumption for a period of time. I've highlighted a specific day where you can see the usage metrics in dollars for each of the services that Clumio platform is backing up. Again, this is our lab environment where we have all the different services running, where customers might need to, it'll be a little different for different customers as well. We can also display the same chart using storage metrics, which will roughly correlate to the same dollar spent as well. Lastly, we also do send these as monthly reports to our customers. At Clumio, we build this backup recovery solution, which is mostly set it and forget it. As in, you set up the backup policies, you protect the data, it keeps running until you need intervention. So it's really hard to go look at these reports on a periodic basis. To make it easier for our customers, now we're sending out the reports to the customers. So it's easier for them to understand what their consumption is. It's a monthly email. It's very informative, periodic reminder, especially for procurement folks who have to budget for things all the time. So now that I've talked about what Clumio's capabilities are, let's talk through a couple examples of this as well. So here's an example of our customer that is using Clumio predominantly for EC2 today, but eventually we'll also start using it for the S3 data lake as well. This is a food distribution turned software company that had two very specific pain points when we started talking to them. First, their larger customers started asking them to adhere to industry compliance frameworks, which required them to air gap their backup data. When they looked at Clumio's offering, they realized that they would have spent 3 times as much building their own air gap solution, and it would have taken them at least 2 years to build it, which would have risked all of the existing customer base, right? And I'll mention this one more time. They required air gap, and it would have taken them 3 times as much from a cost perspective to build their own solution. This is what the big benefit of Clumio is, right? So we make air gap solution. We build an air gap solution for customers, which is turnkey. The second challenge was that they had existing EC2 snapshots that they were keeping for 54 weeks to meet compliance requirements. And like I talked about in an earlier in an earlier slide, Clumio started using Clumio Convert solution to convert all their historical snapshots, which is close to a petabyte in capacity, into backups onto a cost-effective tier provided by Clumio. So Clumio was able to solve 2 problems for the customer, or 2 pain points for the customer. Since Clumio by default offers air gapping for all of the backups to Clumio at no additional cost, customers able to reduce their costs while reducing their risk as well. And by the way, the reducing cost part, they were able to reduce about 40% of the backup costs compared to the existing costs, right? So as you see here, it's 1.2 million is what they were spending today, and they are with Clumio now they're spending about 40% lower than that, which is about 740K. Excuse me. The next customer is a financial services company, which actually AWS team brought to us. Since they're in the financial services industry, they have mandates to back up all of the data, especially the S3 buckets for cyber recovery reasons in case of ransomware intrusion. In this scenario, they have a very, very large bucket, or set of buckets, I should say, and totally equating to about 60 billion objects. Yes, you heard that number right, 60 billion objects for 20 buckets. They quickly realized that Clumio is about a third of the cost compared to AWS backup if you're doing an apples to apples, right? So we can drive the cost down a little further as well if they wanted to use the compliance tier. However, just do an apples to apples comparison, we're a third of the cost. There are many other customer examples from edtech, fintech, manufacturing, SaaS providers that are adopting Clumio, since it's a turnkey SaaS solution that can dramatically reduce their costs, backup costs, especially when it comes to S3 protection. All of these examples show hard savings, but do not include any of the productivity savings that a SaaS solution would bring, which is an added benefit. The productivity savings are do-it-yourself versus using a turnkey solution. That's the productivity savings I'm talking about. The management of your do-it-yourself solution versus a SaaS solution where it comes all pre-built and you have the Clumio team helping you manage your backups yourself. Last but not the least, we'd like to provide our own learnings. Clumio was born and built in the cloud. We've implemented processes and discipline to reduce our own AWS costs. As you can see in the before and after picture, we're driving down costs every day by applying principles and practices of visibility, optimization, and efficiency. For more on our journey, visit the on-demand webinar led by our VP of FinOps and VP of CloudOps that is available on our website for your review. So let's finish off with what we started with. The goal for Clumio is to simplify your backup and recovery needs while keeping it very, very cost effective. And the way to do that is to first identify the assets that you want to protect and the SLAs you want to attach to it, and then protect those assets in a simplified way. And lastly, report on the cost for that and the consumption for it, but also at the same time be able to report auditability of that as well, of backup and recovery as well. So that's what Clumio brings to the table. If you want to start reducing costs, if you want to reduce your backup bill, please start with Clumio, and we can start with a simple demo. Chris, any questions that have come up?
Yeah, we had a couple questions come in. Thanks so much, Karthik. One of the questions we received from the audience a bit earlier was, I'd like to know more about what Clumio can do for RDS backups for long-term retention. For example, RDS Postgres backups for long-term retention.
Yeah, we have a very unique offering when it comes to RDS. There's a couple of different options that we can look at as well. We certainly would love to demo to you these two options. RDS's native tools are snapshots, and generally snapshots are kept within the account. But if you want to keep the snapshots for a longer time, or if you want to keep the data for a longer time, Clumio has a couple of different offerings. One is what we call the granular record retrieval, which you can keep the data for a long time, but also recover data at a very granular rate as well. I'm talking about, recovering only tables that you really need for recovery. There's a couple of advantages to that. One is the fact that AWS is notorious for end-of-lifing certain AWS engines. And if you want to recover data 3 years from now and an engine is end of life, what do you do then? The granular record retrieval allows you to recover to a completely new database engine. If you start with PostgreSQL, like you mentioned, you can recover to MySQL if you really wanted to, or a different version of PostgreSQL too. First and foremost, we can reduce cost dramatically, but we give several other options from a recoverability, which makes our RDS solution very unique as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Another question we got. This has been great so far. Thank you. Where should I start with my AWS bill?
That's a great question. So we have an awesome blog on the Clumio website that kind of talks you through exactly step by step where to look, or first and foremost, where do you go to look at your AWS bill? And within your AWS bill, for each one of the different services, where do you actually go look for the actual charges? Unfortunately, it's not as simple, so you do have to do some complex math to add it all up. But we do walk you through all of the steps that you would need. And we do have that blog, and Chris and the team will share that blog here as well.
Yes, I just shared it with everybody. You can go right there. Another question we received, I think this is actually before we got to that customer example, Karthik, is we've considered building our own backup. Does the speaker have an opinion on that from a cost standpoint?
Yeah, great question. In today's world, everybody thinks do-it-yourself is a lot more cost-effective. It's not, right? So Clumio has been built primarily with backup recovery as a use case. So our job is to make the backup recovery as simple as possible, but do it at the most efficient, scalable way as possible too. Because of that, our cost is significantly lower than most other backup solutions out there, right? Including AWS's own native backup solution. I referred to this example earlier where our food distribution turned software company, they wanted to build their own backup solution for air gapping. It would have taken them 3 times as much as what Clumio would have charged them, or is charging them, I should say. 3 times as much. That's an incredible amount. That's a significant amount of money, right? You're not saving money anymore. You're actually spending more money. But not only that, it would have taken them a long time, right? So Clumio has been in existence for a few years. In the last few years, the 3-4 years, we've been really focused in on AWS backup. For this customer to go build their own backup and recovery capabilities, it would have taken them at least a year or 2 years to get to that part. So the efficiencies are there. The time to market really didn't allow them to do that. But also more importantly, from a cost perspective, would have been a no-go. One other example I'll give you, we're started to work with a SaaS provider, a very large-scale SaaS provider, who's been trying to build their backup recovery using AWS native tools. And it's been a year, and they still haven't had a chance to kind of kick it off as well, right? So they saw Clumio as this turnkey solution. They can just come in and attach their AWS accounts and start backing up within about 15 to 20 minutes. So that's the difference here. Spending about a year to build it versus actually adopting Clumio as a turnkey solution.
All right, I'm seeing another question that came in a bit earlier. This one's a little bit more specific. Why is your S3 cost that much lower than AWS native backup tool?
Well, this is where our secret sauce is. We do have an awesome AWS reInvent presentation on YouTube that we've co-presented with the AWS S3 team, as well as a customer, Cox Auto, who essentially helped us build a solution as well. The key here is how we actually bundle the objects and how we actually reduce costs by bundling objects as well, right? So that's one of the many secret sauces, but that is one of the big reasons why we're able to reduce costs pretty dramatically.
Excellent, thank you, Karthik. Another question that we had come through: does Clumio have capabilities of taking data from multiple S3 buckets and deduplicating the data, where the data may have been copied to multiple buckets?
Yeah, great question. So at the end of the day, the cost of Clumio is pretty flat, regardless of what we do on the back end, whether we duplicate, compress to get the efficiencies, which we do. But the cost to you is exactly the same, which is about 50% of the cost of what you would see with AWS backup tools. Having said that, we certainly can manage all the backups for all your AWS accounts across multiple regions in a single pane of glass, right? So that's the simplicity that Clumio can offer. I would encourage you to book us for a demo, and we can show you that capability as well.
All right, thanks so much, Karthik.
All right, yeah, thanks, Karthik, for putting together a really informative presentation and for all those insights in the Q&A as well. Really appreciate your time today. And we are wrapping up here, but so this is just a quick reminder about all the resources that are available. You still have a minute to grab some of those. So in the handout section, there is a link to that demo, which was the URL on your screen there for most of the Q&A. There are also 3 PDFs there that you can grab. And also Bao from Clumio has posted a couple of resources in the Q&A tab as well. There's one to the blog, top 5 things that you need to know about your AWS backup bill, and there's also a YouTube video link in there. So 2 more resources that you can grab here in the final minute of the presentation. And before we wrap up, we do have one other piece of business. It's the Amazon gift card prize drawing. In the winner of the $250 Amazon gift card was off by an order of magnitude there. It's Kyle Kanja from Hawaii. So congratulations to Kyle Kanja. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I again want to thank Clumio for making this event possible. I want to thank Karthik for a great presentation. And thanks as always for attending and for your questions. That concludes today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.